Good morning, I am Michael Feinberg.
And I'm David Levin.
We are 91.4 S&M here in Houston, Texas.
Today we have several guests. Tell us about them, Michael.
Yes, we do. Today, Mr. Rafe Esque is coming in to tell us the story about how he came up with the model he used in his classroom today. We also have a couple of kids he taught that are going to weigh in and the principal from Camelot.
Alright, well, why don't we go ahead and introduce them? Introduce Mr. Alright, why don't we go ahead and introduce Mr. Esque?
Oh. Hello, David and Michael.
Hello, Mr. Esque. So tell us a little about yourself, Rafe.
Well, my father was a boxer. He taught me to always answer the bell. My mother taught me to help others. This is a big reason why I am a teacher.
Well, it sounds like your dad taught you a great lesson. So tell us about your experience as a student teacher.
Well, I taught 6th grade. I taught 6th grade. The teacher I worked with supported me and really liked the reading program I set up. Most of the kids in my class spoke Spanish, so to get them to engage in reading, we read the classics. Our final book was Romeo and Juliet. I had planned on taking the kids to the Franco Zeffirelli film during the weekend. The children were very excited. However, on Friday, the principal sent me a note in front of the class telling me it was forbidden to take students out on Saturday, and if I proceeded, I would get a bad evaluation when I was done student teaching. So I went to his office furious and gave the note to his secretary and told her some nasty things. They put me on suspension and then made me follow a new teacher around. I learned through this experience I was in no position to talk back to the principal.
I would have hated to repeat my student teaching like you did, but at least you learned a good lesson through the whole thing. So now to the good stuff. Tell us about Camelot.
Camelot. You're diving right in, aren't you, David? Well, Camelot was a middle-class school with only 300 students, but they all spoke English.
Yay!
This was not my first choice. I really wanted to teach at this school in an economically disadvantaged neighborhood. Well, too bad for me. Camelot is where I ended up. The first big thing I can remember about Camelot is the fundraiser. I planned a trip to the Old Globe Theater in San Diego for a group of 25 students. The cost of the trip was to be paid by the parents and to add $25 so the school would make a profit. A couple of parents and I drove down to San Diego and saw 2 plays, Rashomon and Merry Wives of Windsor. The hotel was gorgeous. It had a Hawaiian atmosphere and an Olympic-sized pool that the kids seemed to enjoy. When we started to head back to Los Angeles, Jenny came up to me. I said to her, "Wasn't this a fun weekend?" She told me it was fun, but she'd stayed in nicer hotels in Hawaii and New York. This started making me realize most of the teachers at Camelot took the path of least resistance. Most of the kids were on autopilot, which made teaching easy. They were all telling me to do things a certain way, and I would get along great. But that's not how I do things.
Well, Mr. Rafe, we have Jenny here, so why don't we bring her in?
Yes, please. I'd love to see her.
Hello, Jenny. How are you today?
Hi, a little nervous. I've never been on the radio before.
Well, why don't you tell us about the trip you took to San Diego with Mr. Rafe?
Oh yes, I loved the plays, but the hotel was mediocre. My favorite play was the Merry Wives of Windsor. It was so funny.
Sounds like you enjoyed yourself. Why don't you tell us a little about Camelot?
Well, it's a great school. All the teachers are nice. The only thing I didn't like was the standardized test.
You mean the Survey of Essential Skills?
Yes, that's the test. The teachers were always so hard on us about getting 100. If you finished the test and some of your answers were wrong, the teacher would make you go back and fix them till you got them right.
Mr. Rafe, is this true?
Sadly, yes, it's true. The test is a very easy test to begin with. We had a staff meeting about the test. After the meeting, the 2 teachers pulled me aside and showed me the teaching technique that would make my students get 100. I shouldn't explain how they did this to give other teachers ideas, but to me, it was wrong. I tried going to the principal about it, but he did not seem to care.
Well, Mr. Rafe, luckily we have the principal here with us, so why don't we go ahead and bring him in now?
Wow, Rafe, haven't seen you in a while. How have you been?
Okay, I guess.
Well, Mr. Principal, can I ask you some questions about your school?
I guess so. What can I do you for?
Why did you find Mr. Rafe stubborn when he didn't agree with the technique your teachers were using to help students get ready for the standardized test?
Well, when parents look at schools for their children to go to, they look at scores on tests. Also, when it comes to the budget for schools, the school will be better with better scores gets more money. So all Mr. Rafe had to do was not tell them an answer, but just simply that they had a mistake and they needed to fix it.
Isn't that cheating?
No, just encouraging students to get all the answers right.
Okay, Mr. Principal, thank you for coming in and answering my questions. That is all we need.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on the show.
Alright, Mr. Rafe, I'm going to turn you over to Michael now.
Okay, David, thank you.
So, Mr. Rafe, let's talk about the jungle now.
Sounds great, Michael. Well, I was approached by the principal of the jungle, and he offered me a job. He told me the teaching would be tougher. But he would stay out of my way. And he sure did. He retired the day I started working there. The jungle was crowded, over 2,000 students. Almost none of the students tested at grade level. No one spoke English as their primary language. So I planned a trip to the Shakespeare Festival in San Diego. These children asked the one question that made me feel like I made the right decision. Are there bathrooms and beds at the hotel?
Well, it sounds like you met your match. Tell us about your wife, Barbara.
Well, the first time I met her wasn't the greatest. She asked me what motivated me to teach, and I gave her my pickup line that always worked. She laughed and told me it was the most moronic thing she'd ever heard. I was confused. And then she asked me if this was about me, if I did this for myself. Did the kids just happen to be there? All this hurt, but it was the truth. So I started on my journey for a new role model and a mission. We married later on.
Sounds like she put you in your place. Well, tell us about your mission statement.
My children at the jungle worked harder than anyone else, but there was one problem. They seemed too easily pleased with their efforts. This is a big problem in our world because everything is instant now. Everything has become too easy. I saw this problem the first year I taught my 6th grade class algebra. They were intellectually ready, but had not developed the mental toughness and attitude to keep trying something till they conquered it. I thought about this for weeks. I finally got closer when I was teaching a history lesson on the Declaration of Independence and breaking down the words. I found the problem is that students today do not understand what pursuit means. I found my mission statement when we went to hear Lynn Harrell play a cello concert. After the concerts, my students and I were invited backstage, and one student asked the question that would answer everything for me. The child asked Mr. Harrell how he made music that sounded that beautiful. Mr. Harrell replied with, "There are no shortcuts." My students came to class on Monday with a banner of the class mission, "There are no shortcuts," in the front of the room. From that day forward, the children attacked their work differently. We lengthened the school day. We started studying on Saturdays. So when the algebra test came at the end of the year, all my students passed.
Mr. Rafe, that is just amazing. Now, why don't you explain how everyone met?
I'd be delighted to. I was invited to speak in Houston to people involved with Teach for America. I had a couple of my students join me. They performed Shakespeare, and I spoke about my mission and about shortcuts. After my speech, 2 men approached me. That's you guys.
Yes, we sure did. And we told you you were going to take your mission statement. We made a franchise of schools all over the United States, including here in Houston. Well, we saved the best for last, Mr. Rafe. Tell us about Kevin.
Oh, Kevin. Kevin had an awful stutter, but he was brilliant. He didn't talk much in class, and I respected that. 4 years after he left my class, he showed up at school and talked to my students. He was an amazing young man.
Well, Mr. Rafe, we have a surprise for you. Kevin is here to talk about his experience with you as a teacher. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Michael.
Kevin, can you tell us what you told Mr. Rafe's class that day?
I told them everyone has problems. I never had enough money to do things as a child. I never had a teacher who believed in me till Mr. Rafe. He was so kind and so certain that I was special. Him being like that saved me. I told his class once, "You realize life is unfair. Remember that the world is amazing." I remember like it was yesterday when one child asked me how I got through it all, and I told the class there are no shortcuts.
Thank you, Kevin, for that wonderful eye-opening story.
Thank you, Michael, for letting me tell it, and thank you, Mr. Rafe, for being such an amazing teacher.
No, Kevin. Thank you for letting me know my class mission works.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rafe, for joining us today.
Yes,
Ye-
Mr. Rafe. Thank you for telling the story about the mission statement that you let Michael and I use in our schools today.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place.
This is 91.4 S&M signing out.